Mother, madre, mama, mommy issues. Or as Freud would like to say, when you say one thing but mean your mother. Let's get into it. So this will actually be a bit of a series for the next few videos. I'm going to be discussing mommy issues, daddy issues, how you can deal with it, whether perfect parenting exists in the first place, and we're going to touch on some attachment styles, attachment theory. If you're interested in any or all of these topics, make sure to subscribe and do the little post notification button thing, and then you'll know when those come out. Okay, so the first thing that I would like to say, a couple things about these kinds of issues, both mommy and daddy issues, is that number one, there is a lot of stigma around these, especially I would say daddy issues, because daddy issues are typically associated with females, and as we know, the world is not that kind to women or girls. But these two things are not the fault of the person who is dealing with them. They do come from usually some kind of childhood neglect, or just the way they were raised, which they didn't have any control over, and so it is not their fault. They should not be shamed for it. That being said, if you do show signs of daddy or mommy issues, then it is on you as well to be aware of that and to rectify your behavior, to be a better person. We all have issues. That does not excuse us from negative behaviors, especially when they harm others, but of course they can also harm ourselves. Another kind of disclaimer is that even though in the past mommy issues are assigned to men and daddy issues to women, which is just not true, the fact is that both girls and guys can suffer from mommy issues and can also suffer from daddy issues. In fact, both are being slowly redefined into more of seeking the essence of masculinity or femininity. So if you're seeking a daddy, you're kind of seeking someone to take action, and if you're seeking a mommy, then you're more seeking someone who can take care of your emotional needs, which you might not have had growing up. Mommy issues originate from Freud's idea of the Oedipus complex, where it's believed that as a young child during your development, you'll have this kind of attraction to your opposite sex parent. As a result, you'll form a rivalry with your same-sex parent, and you'll have to go through a few stages in your development in order to resolve that conflict and develop as having a normal development. It can manifest in a couple of ways. If someone has mommy issues, or if you have mommy issues, you will have a habit of dating people who have similarities to your mother. I would say that could be physical similarities or personality, or both. And this means that unconsciously you are seeking a substitute for your mother rather than an equal partner. Because of that, you'll usually behave in reaction to unresolved issues with your mother, and likely repeating behaviors that either she modeled before you or that she's conditioned you to behave in relation to her. And this is quite deep-seated, and again, it's unconscious. Because of that, typically your relationships have this power imbalance where either the person affected by them are overly controlling or overly submissive. So one of these extremes. An obvious way that this can manifest is that if someone grew up being babied by their mother, where she did everything for them, then that would mean that they expect the same of their partner. They expect their partner to take care of them, to drop everything for them, to take care of their physical and emotional needs, even if it comes at the expense of their partner's well-being or health. And this can also mean, the typical idea of like the woman should do all the household chores and they will do nothing because that's how they were taken care of growing up, which shows you how some of our cultures. But anyway, other ways it can manifest is lack of boundaries, testing their partner's love to see if it's unconditional, and this can be because the partner is seeking out what they didn't get in their childhood from their mother or a parent in general, such as unconditional love and acceptance of them no matter what, and so they're seeking this out in their relationships now. Obviously, we know that as adults now, relationships are not completely unconditional. A partner's not going to put up with everything that you do like a parent is expected to. It can also be a fear of abandonment, poor communication, which means that they might have trust issues or they have a difficulty being vulnerable. They may also have a strong need for affection and approval, or have a difficulty showing affection, and it can also be a rapid shift between those two. They typically also have a negative self-esteem, which gets in the way of the relationship, causing jealousy, a need for constant reassurance and validation. And this also means that they might have cold feet when it comes to relationships and committing to someone and having relationship anxiety. Another way that it can manifest is having difficulty or avoiding discussing their mom or even communicating themselves with their mother. But you might also have difficulty making your own decisions as a result of growing up, maybe with an overprotective mother who did everything for you, like we said, and so you maybe seek out a partner who can help you with those decisions, and you seek that maternal guidance. And let's say you grew up with a mom who was overly judgmental of you, then you might have extreme sensitivity to either real or just perceived criticism. It can also show up as clinginess and people-pleasing behavior. If you grew up with a mother who you were more of the caretaker of than her taking care of you, you might actually seek needy partners because you're used to being the caretaker. On the other hand, let's say if you had a mother that you weren't very close to and she wasn't a safe space for you, then you would actually find yourself shutting down and having difficulty getting close to your partner because you're just trying to protect yourself. We kind of discussed this just now with some of the manifestations of it, and it's pretty straightforward. You know, your mom is probably the most important attachment that you develop very early on in your life. I mean, she birthed you, so basically she's the first attachment you ever make. Your relationship with your mother is a very important part of your early years of development. And so obviously if you have a strained relationship, maybe she abused you, manipulated you, was just a toxic person, she didn't give you the emotional support that you needed, then that would lead to mommy issues. One of the reasons that mommy issues are quite dangerous, especially if you've had a strained or toxic relationship and you're seeking out the right type of, mother that you should have experienced in your partner, is that if your partner does have all these traits and fulfills your needs, then you will idealize them, put them on a pedestal. But if they don't fulfill those needs, they don't fill in those shoes, then it will mess you up and it will make them fall from that pedestal really fast. On the other hand, you can also have a mom who is really overprotective. She really, again, babied you, so that could also cause mommy issues. And actually, we talk about overprotective mothers and then like the toxic mothers, but there's also the possibility of having this overly permissive mother where you had a weird dynamic with her where she was a lot more like your best friend and didn't really play the part of a parent. Maybe she looked the other way when you made mistakes, didn't really give you that discipline that you expect of a parent. Just trying to get all the juicy details of your love life and what's going on. You might either start to do things just to shock her and just to get that discipline that you're looking for, or that you actually withdraw from her completely because you don't want her to keep popping up into your life, into things that she shouldn't be interested in. So really, it's not just a bad mother who can cause this, and that's why it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're suffering from mommy issues that your mom or your parents were not trying to be good parents. They could have had good intentions and it just went wrong. Also, it's important to remember that some mothers are not in their child's life because they might have passed away, they might have had a mental or physical disability that didn't allow them to be there for you, and that's not really in their control, but of course it will still affect you, so you can develop mommy issues. So it's actually interesting for me to learn about how different types of parent-child dynamics can still lead to mommy issues, and it also made me realize how just because you have a certain dynamic with your mother doesn't mean that you're going to have that same dynamic with your child, but it can still lead to an unhealthy relationship. It really reminded me of the show Gilmore Girls. If you've never watched it or you don't know much about it, basically you have, let's say, the main character. She grew up with a very judgmental, hard to please, strict mother, and when she had her own child, she instead became more of a best friend to her daughter, probably trying to avoid being the strict mother that she had and not wanting to repeat that trauma that she experienced, but instead she became more of a best friend to her daughter and maybe didn't give her as much discipline as should have been given, but it was still out of good intentions. And it can even be argued that her strict mother also had good intentions. She just wanted her to look proper and to have a good reputation and to have a successful life, but just didn't execute really well. I'm not saying that all parents or all mothers have good intentions with their children even when they're not doing it well, but it's something to keep in mind that most parents are trying their best with what they have, what they've grown up with. They're just trying to do better than what they experienced, and that might not translate really well. And this brings us to the final section, which is how mommy issues don't just affect romantic relationships, but actually affect how you are as a parent yourself. So as a father, you might really struggle to do household chores and clean up after yourself because you just never grew up with that expectation. And so you might not really help your wife out as much with taking care of the kids. And because of that, you might look for a partner who does fulfill those duties, and so you don't even get out of that cycle, because you will find someone who does everything for you while you do nothing, and so your kids will also see that modeled for them. Now for women, they might bend over backwards to be a better mother than their mom was to them, and that could also mean that maybe they're setting unrealistic expectations for themselves, or just doing way too much and maybe at the expense of their own well-being. And obviously for women it would be more complicated, because you are gonna fill those same shoes that your mother did for you, so it's even more important to you to be a better mother than she was. There's more of a direct connection there. Plus the fact that society tends to place a whole lot of pressure on mothers and judge them really harshly on whether they're a good mother or not, which adds a whole other level of stress. And that is all to say that if you've just realized that you have mommy issues, and especially if you're a woman, just know that being a good parent, in the end, there's a lot of definitions to it, and all that matters is that you try your best to not repeat those unhealthy cycles. But that really does beg the question, is there such thing as a perfect parent or perfect parenting style? We'll see. Stay tuned for the next video. The daddy issues first.